Number one is hard work. I have an immigrant father who had 3 jobs when I was growing up. Everything is surmountable is my attitude, which I inherited as a legacy from my two very hardworking parents. What sets most people apart is hard work and always elevating the expectations of yourself.
Welcome back to another episode of Founders Club. I'm your host, Dez DeCosta, and today's guest is Roxana Taghavi, a certified family law specialist. As co-founder of Valencia-Taghavi Family Law, she is known for her expertise in high-asset divorce, complex custody cases, and dynamic advocacy both in and out of the courtroom. Keep listening as she shares her insights and passion for making a difference. Welcome back to another episode of Founders Club. Today I have a very special guest, Roxana Taghavi with Valencia-Taghavi Family Law. Roxana, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Roxana, as we know, you have been working with Valencia-Taghavi Family Law. And what made you choose this specialization of law?
Well, I've actually been a family law attorney for about 20 years and came from a big family law firm in Century City in Los Angeles. And then I started my own firm in early 2020. And then I partnered with Ben Valencia about 4 years ago, and we formed our current firm. So the specialization in family law predates our partnership. But what the reasons I chose a specialty in family law is because just by the practice of family law for so many years, I gained the expertise to take the exam to become qualified as an expert. And I think, not only is it a good selling point for clients, but it also shows the court and other attorneys when you're litigating the level of your sophistication, which enhances your practice and is a good sale for your reputation. So that's the main reason for becoming a specialist in a formal way like that. But otherwise, my love for the field has evolved over the course of my career and something that I enjoy doing.
Love that. Thank you so much for diving into your journey of that. We're going to dive even deeper into your strategy in how you approach cases, what has been some of your highlights, maybe what has been some of the challenges. And then we're going to dive deeper into you as a professional, how you approach your days, what strategies you have in those areas. So we're going to look deeper into all of those things. So starting off with your career, what unique strategies do you believe you bring to cases? What does that look like for you?
So I think on a more basic or fundamental level, I'm good at getting to know people. I'm good at reading the room. I don't think those are things that I learned by being a family law attorney. I think, there are things I learned in my earlier life and development, or it might just be natural. But they're talents that have been enhanced by the practice of law. So I think ability to connect with clients is the way that I start. I also genuinely care about my clients and the outcome for my clients. I like to win, so that's probably a personal thing. And I also think I'm reasonable, so I try to manage expectations so that people aren't wasting their time and money chasing unrealistic goals. And that impacts reputation too, because I don't think people like to be misled and then regret it later. So those are some fundamental approaches I take with strategy. But then beyond that, just in the course of working with a network of the best experts in Los Angeles, which is obviously, a hot pot for litigation, more than other smaller towns might be. I've received the benefit of working with renowned forensic accountants and other experts in our field, including mental health professionals and real estate appraisers and such, private investigators. And having that network available to me for so many years helps shape the strategy of each of my cases when it's relevant.
Yeah, I can imagine you cross paths with many different walks of life and many different people that help shape your perspective, especially in what you do. It's very important. You mentioned being realistic, and I think that's also an amazing quality. What steps do you take to make the divorce process as smooth as possible for clients in managing those expectations, and especially when emotions are running high?
Well, a lot of times it just depends on the case and the client, but once we've gotten to know our clients, and it might be before they have filed or been served with divorce or custody pleadings, but it can also be after they've already had a case with and have been represented by a different attorney or attorneys, and their needs have changed or they've streamlined what they're looking for in terms of preference. We sometimes refer our clients to therapists and other or support groups if there's domestic violence involved. And I think compartmentalizing and organizing the case that way so that they're not only following your direction in the courtroom, but they're also addressing their personal needs, mental health needs, and emotional needs. And sometimes, too, if they've been disadvantaged in a marriage or other partnership in terms of knowing what all the finances are, we have them work with experts to get on top of managing their own money and budget and learning more about their financial picture, just to help them feel more in control of the future, both emotionally and financially. So that's like a first step in terms of simplifying the process and making them feel supported, which is really important. And it helps them participate more meaningfully in their case when they're doing all of these other things, not just feeling overwhelmed and stressed out like they don't know anything. So I think that's an important first step, whether we're meeting a client for the first time and starting a case with them or inheriting a case that might have gone wrong in some ways.
It really sounds like your firm takes a holistic approach to helping people in need in these situations. I've loved that you've brought up a few times now the mental health challenges or the burdens that are just naturally a part of these situations. And, I don't think enough people really take that into account. It's not so much just what's on paper in black and white or what's in the courtroom. There are so many mental health or emotions that run high during this time. I'm not sure how much you're able to divulge, but I'd love it if you could share a story about a time when you helped a client navigate a challenging situation and then come to a positive resolution.
Sure. I mean, I can just say generally because without specific reference to any client, there are clients with similar issues in certain cases. We have been able to identify when a client may really be dealing with mental health challenges, not only the regular, strain of a divorce or the breakup of a family, which is obviously a stressful time for anybody. But we have certain clients that appear pretty immediately to maybe require psychiatric or and or medical intervention. And we've had cases like that where, it's challenging because you have to gain the trust of a client who may not be all together at that moment. And it requires putting together the right team because it's also very important for the presentation in a case for a client to be competent. And also, for my own liability purposes, to make sure my client understands what I'm saying and why. And so we've had some success with those extremely challenging cases where, we get our client psychologically evaluated. We have a qualified mental health professional make recommendations, maybe referral to a psychopharmacologist, and the client is able to get back on track in that way. And sometimes, getting back on track just means following direction and then achieving positive results in your case instead of being so overwhelmed that the behaviors associated with mental health issues escalate instead of de-escalate. And so we've had some rewarding moments where we feel like we've really helped somebody who is struggling with mental health issues achieve positive results in their cases. And we haven't always been successful because there's a lot of moving parts to that scenario, and it requires the client being on board and capable of following our directions. But when we are successful in those more challenging cases, it's very rewarding.
Right. And speaking of moving parts, what are some of the main factors that judges consider when making a child custody decision? Just for, listeners wondering more about all the dynamics of how this works.
Well, in California, all child custody decisions are based on a child or children's best interests. And that's a pretty broad concept, but there's a lot of statutory and case law that and training of judges that helps guide in that decision. So that's the main component is what custody plan is going to serve a particular child's best interests. And that can be influenced by, has one or both parents been a perpetrator of domestic violence in the marriage or parent relationship? Does either parent have a substance abuse problem or a history of documented substance abuse? Does the child or children have special needs? Is one or more of the parents more qualified or available to meet a child's needs, whether they're special or not? Are each of these parents capable of meeting basic needs of children, like food and shelter and keeping a child safe? So obviously it's a very complicated and nuanced area of the law, and it's the driving factor of all child custody decisions.
Thank you for diving into that. That's definitely a lot to consider, especially on the judge's point of view, but I'm sure that's also how you strategize, approaches to your case as they differ case by case.
Right.
So then these next set of questions are going to be diving into more so how you approach your day and your career as a professional. So what is your typical day and how do you make it productive?
That's a good question. I feel like I don't really ever turn off, so I'm like always thinking about my cases. So, but in terms of just like my waking hours, I try to dive into to use your words, I right away. Like when I wake up, I just want to make sure I'm like caught up on emails. And I know what's going to be on my plate by the time I get to my office. If it's an office day, a lot of our days are spent in court when we have scheduled court hearings. So it's really about being prepared leading up to the court hearing in terms of having the evidence you need organized, having copies of all of the pleadings that you filed, and thinking about what are your arguments going to be. And that doesn't happen on the spot. It happens over the course of usually several weeks, that you're not only physically planning and organizing for the presentation of your case, but you're constantly thinking and strategizing. And the benefit of having the partnership I have with Ben is we confer with each other a lot, and oftentimes both participate in cases, especially at court hearings and in depositions. So to get back to the call of your question, it's really just about actively thinking about your cases all the time. For me, it's not something that I leave into the last minute or the day of, and conferring and with other experts to narrow your focus, decide how to present your case, what order to call witnesses in, and that type of thing. So just like basic every day to day in the office, I get up and start working right away. And when I go to court, I've prepared in advance.
I can imagine it's not easy to just turn off, especially when you have all of these people's lives who are kind of the future of what happens next is really dependent on how things go in the courtroom. So all the planning, everything, all the things that are going on, week after week, and however long these cases usually take could determine the lives of children and, mothers and fathers. So I totally get that. As far as how you strategize your days, what is one habit that helps you be more productive?
I think that looking at all of your emails that may have come in from the last time you checked, and then responding to them immediately to kind of get things off of your plate by the time you arrive to the office or court helps me. It's sort of like, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but it's like making the bed or taking out the trash. It's just starting on a clean slate when you actually start your day in the office or in court. That helps me feel on top of it and less overwhelmed or distracted when I'm having to draft something or make an argument in court. I don't want to be thinking about all the other stuff I haven't done yet. So I like to do that as a start.
It's the taking action immediately, which I think just helps the overwhelm with everything else that you're dealing with your cases, just doing what needs to be done, it sounds like.
And everybody, and especially in our field, which is more sensitive and emotional because it relates to families, communication with our clients is very important, and making them feel seen and heard and like they're not being ignored. And it's not always possible because some clients are more high maintenance than others and our schedules can become compacted. But it's even if you can't respond substantively to somebody's inquiry or aren't available to speak or meet when they want to, just returning an email or letting them know that that they want to meet and that you're going to get back to them after your court hearing. That sort of thing, I find is very much appreciated by clients.
I can see that, yeah, especially when emotions are running high and they just want to know that the person that they're putting their trust in does have their back. This next question is a little bit more abstract. How do you bring your ideas to life?
I think just action. I don't, it's always been, pretty irritating to me on an interpersonal level when people are telling me about all the big things they want to do or wish they could have done, but they don't really do it. And so I think just like taking a first step and actually trying to reach a goal or make an idea come to life is the way I do it. So I don't just complain or make theories or conspiracies. I just, I try to do something towards the finish line of where I'm going. And sometimes a series of steps might lead you in a different direction, but at least you get somewhere. You're not just like sitting around ruminating. So I guess that would be the way I do it.
Love that. Yep. Just taking action, taking quick action. I think that goes back to one of the other questions as well, which was, what is one habit that makes you productive? And you said just getting things done when they're in front of you instead of just leaving them to be. What advice would you give your younger self?
I mean, it probably depends. I probably give my younger self a lot of advice, but I think as I'm getting older, I'm a worker. And so it's kind of hard for me to even say this because I haven't started doing it yet. But I think taking more time for personal self-care, being with family, traveling, and other pleasures that I have taken a back seat to my career. And I think I would tell my younger self to remember the importance of like the work-life balance and how fast time goes by and you can't get it back. But I haven't taken my advice yet. But that's the advice I would give myself and do give myself. I just have to follow it.
Great advice. I love that. All right, tell us something you believe that almost nobody agrees with you on.
Yeah, I mean, it's case specific always, but just generally speaking, um, I don't always agree, for example, that as much as I think that both parents have meaningful involvement in a kid's life, all things being equal, there are some cases we litigate where infant are involved, like if parents have never been married or have a short relationship that results in a pregnancy and the birth of a child, but they don't remain partners. And I don't always agree that, a child who's 1 month old should be having 50% of overnights with a dad if the baby's breastfeeding and things like that. And usually results aren't so draconian, but it depends on a judicial officer. I've had a judicial officer tell a mom that she needed to wean her child off of breastfeeding so that dad could have more time. And in that case, I agreed because the kid was like over 2 years old, and sometimes moms weaponize that ability to marginalize a father. So it really, like, that's what I'm saying, it's case specific. But I also think there are some judges who can too generally apply the law rather than focus on best interest. So best interest, yeah, a child should have frequent and continuing contact with their dad, but maybe it doesn't need to be 50% overnights when you're under 4 months old. It really depends. But that's something I, as a mother, a woman and a mother, and especially when I was earlier in my career and having just had a baby 14 years ago, my first child, I think I was put off a little bit in some of the cases I had where there seemed to be a disregard for the attachment, the early attachment months between a newborn and its mother. And that might not be a popular opinion. But yeah, so that's one of the areas.
Yeah, no, that's a lot of insight. And thank you for shedding light on those areas as well that we might not see. Now, being in such a emotionally driven field, when you feel overwhelmed or unfocused, what do you do?
I mean, I think, well, sometimes, I'll just, Ben and I'll just like hang out and laugh, or I'm like, I might go shopping. I just do like to get my mind off of whatever's distracting me. I think you have to like refocus. So maybe just like leaving the problem or whatever's overwhelming you for a minute or for a day, and then revisiting it with a fresh pair of eyes so that there's room for like ideas to be born instead of being suppressed by stress. So I'll usually step away to refocus and maybe try to get some other things out of the way and then come back to the problem that was bugging me.
Great approach. That's always nice. Just do something that gives you joy, come back to it. It'll still be there when you come back to it. Now, what is one strategy that has helped you grow or advance in your career?
I mean, number one is hard work. I have an immigrant father who had 3 jobs when I was growing up, and like everything is surmountable is my attitude, which I inherited as a legacy from my 2 very hardworking parents. So I think what sets most people apart from other people in any field is hard work versus laziness, and always elevating the expectations of yourself. So I sometimes look at a case and the way we handled it and what the outcomes were and say, what could we have done better here? I'm totally open to receive constructive criticism, but also I constructively criticize myself. Like, oh, I could have done this better, or, I shouldn't have waited so long to do this, or blah, blah, blah. I just think it's the way to keep excelling. But so, yeah, I just think number one is hard work. No excuses.
Can't beat hard work, that's for sure. Well, we have reached the end of the interview. Just wanted to thank you again, Roxana, for your time and for shedding light on so many areas, not only in your industry and your profession, what you do, but also just getting more insight into who you are as a professional. So I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.